It's that time of year, the 2025 Monster Energy Motocross of Nations. This weekend, October 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Crawfordsville, Indiana, Ironman Raceway. This is the team breakdown by nation. This year, the entry list. This may not be the most updated list. Obviously, just on the U.S. front, we've had some things happen in the last week as far as the team is concerned. Some other teams may be switching riders here within this week before the big race on Sunday, including the qualifying race on Saturday. But this is the full team breakdown that we have up to date right now for the 2025 Monster Energy Motocross of Nations. Starting with the defending champions from last year, Australia, number 1, number 2, and number 3, Jet Lawrence, Kyle Webster, and Hunter Lawrence. This is the strongest team going in on paper. This is the strongest team results-wise. Obviously, we know on the U.S. front what Jet and Hunter have been doing this year. Kyle Webster, he's the Australian motocross champion in the 450 class, the newly crowned champion. He put in a good couple of performances this year for the Nationals that he did come over for in the 450 class along with Jet and Hunter. He raced the 250 well last year at Matterley Basin in England. He had some factory parts on the Honda. Sounds like he's getting an even better package on that 250 this year. It sounds like he might even be riding Joe Shimoda's bike. So all that in, Australia is the odds-on favorite to repeat going into Motocross of Nations this year at Ironman. Second from last year, USA, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Eli Tomac, Hayden Deegan, and RJ Hampshire. Obviously, this is a big change from what it was just a week ago. It was going to be Sexton, Deegan, and Tomac. Obviously, Sexton with a big crash at the SMX Finals in Vegas. And currently, Deegan is a question mark. He is confirmed in as of the time of this recording, but things could change. He suffered the broken collarbone in Moto 2 at the SMX Finals in Vegas. But with all that being said, the new team is now Eli Tomac going up to the MXGP class. Deegan is still in the MX2 class. And then RJ Hampshire has now been moved into the MX Open class. Should any more changes happen, Justin Cooper is the reserve rider for the MX2 class. He's already riding the 250F. Should Deegan not be able to race or, race fully, J Coop is ready to go. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out here in the next few days before we get to qualifying and free practice on Saturday. But that is your number 2 team from last year, the United States. Quick update, guys. Hayden Deegan is out of the Motocross of Nations. When I recorded this video, he was still in as of Monday, which was yesterday. He was going to try to ride. Didn't work out. He was going to try again today on Tuesday. Didn't sound like that went any better, so he is out. J Coop is in. Third from last year, the Netherlands, number 7, number 8, and number 9, Glenn Koldenoff, KWolfe, and Calvin Valandren. Very, very solid team, a very capable winning team. Koldenoff, great performances on the Fantic this year, a couple of moto wins. He might have had an overall, I can't really remember, but he was definitely strong on that Fantic. He could possibly get a whole shot on that machine. KWolfe, in the final moto of the MX2 World Championship last weekend in Australia, loses out on the title to Simon Langenfelder. He was the defending champ going into that race. He had a shot at it with about 3 laps to go before the race was red flagged early due to the conditions. But DeWolf wants to make up for last year. He had some crashes. DeWolf wants to show everyone he was the rightful champion this year. And then Calvin Valandren, good performances this year. Inconsistent in the MXGP class in the World Championships, but he did have some moto wins. He might have had an overall as well. This is a very solid team. Valandren, the South African Dutchman, that's always been a controversy. It's been a controversy for the last several years. But that is your number 3 team from Netherlands, Koldenoff, DeWolf, and Valandren. Number 4 from last year, Spain, number 10, number 11, and number 12, Ruben Fernandez, Guillaume Ferrez, and Francisco Garcia. Fernandez, the factory Honda rider in the MXGP series, along with Tim Geiser. He's good at getting starts. He was inconsistent. He wasn't getting a lot of good starts this year, but he was getting good starts. He was running up front. He did have an injury during the season, so that kind of hampered him back a little bit. But he rode well in Matterley Basin last year. He is very capable to put in a top 5 performance overall in the MXGP and MX2 motos, as well as the MXGP and the MX Open motos. So do not sleep on Ruben Fernandez for 1 second. Guillaume Ferrez, very back and forth few years for the Spaniard. Coming over here as a member of Star Yamaha. Then he gets hurt. He signs with Factory Husqvarna. He gets hurt again. Goes back to Europe. Races the Triumph this year. put in good performances, a couple of moto podiums. He might have even had an overall podium at one point, but he's been looking very strong in the World Championships here on that triumph. And so between he and Fernandez, very solid. Don't know a lot about Garcia. I think he's a younger rider, but I could be wrong. Not a whole lot of information on him, but between Fernandez and Perez, solid team. Those two will be putting in some strong finishes. And if Garcia can put in top 15 finish roughly, that will improve Spain's chances of holding on to a top 5 position going into Ironman this year. Number 5 from last year, France, Romain Febvre, Mathis Vallin, and Maxime Renault, number 13, 14, and 15. Romain Febvre wins his second world title in 10 years. He won it back in 2015. He wins it again in 2025 aboard the Kawasaki. Took it right down to with a few motos to go. Mathis Vallin is the question mark here. Obviously, going in up until the last few weeks, everyone expected it to be Tom Vial. But with him having the season that he did here in the United States in the 250 class, not the greatest one to his standards and to everybody's standards that we had, based on him being a former 2-time world champion, mixed in with he's going back to Europe next year with the factory MXGP Honda team on a 450, and he's going to be racing that 450 Honda in the World Supercross Series this year. So for those reasons, that is why Tom Vial is not racing the MX2 class this year. That's why he's not racing the Motocross of Nations for France. And then Maxime Renault. Renault had some injuries during the year, which really held him back. He's strong. He was when he did race, he was less consistent than what he's been in the past racing the World Championships, and even when he would race the 250 class, the MX2 class in the World Championships. So not the strongest team just when you aggregate over a year for France, but definitely a strong team, another top 5 solid team with the world champion Febvre, Mathis Vallin, and Maxime Renault. Vallin, I didn't really hit on him individually. He can start. He has a hard time staying there, however, so he's the question mark for the French Motocross of Nations team. 6 from last year, Germany, 16, 17, and 18. Ken Roczen, Simon Langenfelder, and Maximilian Spies. Roczen, if he gets starts, he's going to be up front for the first few laps. He's got the speed to do it. The knee injury and the surgery that he had during the summer might have hampered him a little bit, but he's been riding. Sounds like he's strong. He's ready to go. And he put in a great performance last year at Matterley Basin. So he's going to be a little bit of a question mark, but not really. Simon Langenfelder, the newly crowned MX2 world champion. He took it down to the final moto against KWolfe. Won it in the nasty, gnarly conditions, the deep water, the holes, everything, and he held on. And he looks strong, even stronger this year on that Red Bull KTM compared to last year on the factory gas. So Langenfelder is going to be one to watch in that MX2 fight individually as well as, as for the class and the overall in the MXGP MX2 moto as well as the MX2 MX Open moto. And then Max Spies, don't really have any information on him. So Germany may not have the strongest team this year compared to last year. They don't have like a Max Nagel on that team, but between Roczen and Langenfelder, they definitely have a strong team going into Indiana this weekend. 7th from last year, Slovenia, 19, 20, 21. Tim Geiser, Jaka Peklaj, and Jan Panzer. This is a strong Slovenian team. They rode well last year. I can't remember the third rider they had last year because I think Panzer and I know Geiser was on the team last year, and Geiser won both motos last year that he raced in. So I can't remember who the other rider was, but this is still a solid team out of Slovenia. Don't really have a whole lot of information on Peklaj. He's been racing the MX2 series, not the greatest performances, but Slovenia is not a very big country, so their talent level isn't very deep. Geiser in the past, he's done well in his qualifying races on Saturday. His other 2 teammates have not put it in the performances where Geiser was great, but Slovenia as a team didn't even make the A final. So for this team right now, this is a final team. This is still a top 10 performing team. Once again, Tim Geiser, Jaka Peklaj, and Jan Panzer. 8th from last year, Italy, 22, 23, and 24, Antonio Cairoli, Andrea Adamo, and Andrea Bonacorsi. Solid team. This isn't a winning team with the ageless Cairoli, but it's still a solid top 5 possible team. Cairoli's going to be on the Ducati this year, so it's going to be the first time at a Motocross of Nations for Ducati. If you haven't been to a US Supercross this year or the MX Outdoor Nationals to take a close look at the Ducati, get your pit pass, go walk through the pits, take a close look at he as well as Jeremy Seawer's factory Ducatis. They're still pretty stock, but there's a little bit differences between these bikes this weekend and the bikes that are going to be that KWolfe raced at Millville and Redbud during the summer. Andrea Adamo, the 2023 MX2 World Champion, he finally got back to the old form. He won some motos. He did have an overall or two during the championship this year, which were his first since he won that MX2 title back in 23. He was third or fourth in the championship this year. I believe he was third. So definitely better than what he was when he did his title defense in 2024. Decent performance at Matterley Basin last year in England, but I think he's coming in with a different wave of confidence, even though he still didn't win that world championship, but I think his overall riding this year has been a lot better. So I think he's going to put in really good performances on that 250 this year at Ironman. And then Andrea Bonacorsi, solid performance last year in England, right around that top 10 area on the Yamaha. He's racing the Fantic this year. He had some injuries, so he didn't really get to show a lot this year in the World Championships, but he's still a very capable rider. Top 5 at best, probably, with this team. Maybe top 4. But once again, it's Antonio Cairoli, Andrea Adamo, and Andrea Bonacorsi. 9th from last year, Switzerland, 25, 26, and 27. Jeremy Seewer, Nico Grudeman, and Valentin Guillot. Seewer and Guillot have been on this team numerous times together. I don't know how many times exactly it is, but it's got to be approaching 10 at this point. Very solid. Seewer is going to be on that factory Ducati, along with Cairoli, like I mentioned just a moment ago. Guillot showed strong performances in the outdoor championships this year. Solid top 10 rides on a privateer Yamaha. So those two are going to be strong. Don't really know a lot about Grudeman. He raced the 250 class, the MX2 class in the World Championships here and there. Don't really see him performing well. If he can put in top 15 overall performances, or maybe even top 20 overall performances, that helps Switzerland's chances to be a top 7 team. I don't really have them going much further than that. They were 9th last year. I don't really have them going above 7 with this team. That's maybe a long shot, but Grudeman's the unknown with this team, but definitely going to be strong rides this year out of Seewer and Valentin Guillot. Number 10 from last year, Latvia, 28, 29, 30. Carlos Racelis, Yanis Racelis, and Pauls Jonas. Racelis had a very strong ride last year. He was lights out the surprise rider of the Motocross of Nations last year. Great performances. He even had some crashes, like early first, second lap crashes, and still put in great performances for Latvia to get them into that top 10 position. His younger brother Yanis Racelis this year is his first time racing the Motocross of Nations. He's raced the European 250 Championships this year, or he might have raced MX2, but he's not on the speed of his brother. But still, 2 young brothers on this team. Latvia, not another small country, not a whole lot of talent to pull from. And then the former world champion Pauls Jonas, MX2 and MXGP Pauls Jonas. Jonas had a rough year with injuries, missed a lot of the season. He's on that Kawasaki. Didn't really sound like he was gelling with that Kawasaki a lot this year. Not like he really got to race it a ton. Top 10 was really good out of Latvia this year. That's probably the best that I put them this year. I could be wrong. They may be like an 8-9 team, but not much farther than 10, especially with Yanis Racelis being the rookie, being the young rider on this team. Carlos racing a 450 this year. I actually like that move out of Latvia. Not really, like I said, like they had a lot to pull from, but with his style, I like him on a 450. He's still a young kid. He's only about 19 years old, I think, but I like his style on a 450. So I'm excited to see how he does racing that bike. But again, top 10 team from last year, Carlos Racelis, Yanis Racelis, and Pauls Jonas. Great Britain was 12th last year, 34, 35, and 36. Conrad Muse, Dylan Walsh, and Ben Watson. I like this team. This is a top 8 team, if not higher. Muse was one of those kids coming up a few years ago, a handful of years ago, that was going to be one of the next big things in Europe. Didn't really work out for him. He's still a perfectly capable rider. He's been winning the British Championships the last few years in the 450 class. Dylan Walsh, we've seen him over here in the United States. Fast. If they can get him a motor, he can run. Whoever's building his bikes, if they can get him a strong motor in that 250, he's going to be capable of putting in decent performances. And then Ben Watson on the beta, he had a rough year with injuries this year. That's kind of been his story the last few years. But him in the MX Open class on that beta, I'd say a top 10 moto from him would be really good. I don't know if he could go much higher than that. but definitely a strong Britain team. Not the strongest they've had. You know, they don't have riders like Tommy Searle, but you know, still decent team. This is still a top 10 performing team out of Great Britain. 15th last year was Belgium, Lucas Koenen, Sasha Koenen, and Liam Everts, 46, 47, and 48. Their finish should have been a lot better last year, but in the very first moto of the day, the MXGP and the MX2 moto, Lucas Koenen crashed, messed up his shoulder. He was done for the day, so that's why, you know, he had 2 30s scores, or you know, maybe even 2 40 scores for Belgium. That's why their results were down as far as they were. But Lucas Koenen, very, very strong this year in the World Championships. Multiple moto wins, multiple overalls in the MXGP class. Second overall in the championship to Roman Febvre. He could win a moto this year. Even with Geiser being in there, Hunter being in there, Jet being in there, Lucas could surprise a lot of people and get a moto win in the MXGP MX2 race, as well as the MXGP MX Open race. So watch for him. His younger brother, Sasha Koenen. Sasha stepped up this year. He won more motos. He won more overalls. He still had some of the big crashes, but he matured a lot this year, and he definitely put in strong performances, and Sasha can get starts. If there's anybody on this entire rider list that can get a start, and especially a 250 rider that can start with the 450s, it's Sasha Koenen. You know, even more so than Deegan or J Coop, even with his being as small as they are. Sasha's smaller, and he's got good reaction time, and he has good technique. So for those reasons, it would not surprise me one bit if Belgium lined Sasha up on the inside of the starting gate. He could pull a whole shot if he gets out of the first 10 feet of the gate well. So that's the Koenen brothers. And then Liam Everts, he raced the MX2 class this year. He had moto wins, he had overalls. I like him on a 450. He's a little bit bigger guy. He's still on the smaller side, but he's got a little bit longer legs. I like him on a 450. I'm interested to see what he does. Was in contention. He actually led the MX2 World Championship at one point. Injury, crashes, you know, really kind of derailed his season a little bit. But Liam is still perfectly capable of putting in good finishes. I'd say a top 8 performance out of him overall in a moto would be really, really good for him. You know, this being his first time on the 450. So I'm really going to pay attention to him just to see how well he rides that bike. Plus, Stefan's going to be over, Harry's going to be over. So it's going to be really cool to see the whole Everts family over this year for the Motocross Nations. But that is Belgium, Lucas Koenen, Sasha Koenen, and Liam Everts. That's going to do it. That is your full team breakdown for the 2025 Monster Energy Motocross of Nations, October 3rd, 4th, and 5th at Ironman Raceway in Crawfordsville, Indiana. If you see me walking around, yell at me, give me a shout, and let's go racing on home soil. Motocross of Nations 2025. I will see you guys there.